So my name is Stacy Mildenberger. I'm your customer success manager. I serve the state of Florida, so I get to work with state agencies as well as several of our large municipalities across the state. So I have the privilege of working with government agencies all day, every day, and making sure that they're getting the full benefit of their Teams usage, including Teams meetings. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to really go step by step through scheduling a meeting. And of course, today we're focusing on all the before the meeting processes that can help you be set up to have the best and most successful meeting that you need to have. We are all definitely geared towards delivering productivity and having outcomes to these meetings so that everyone gets a benefit for all the brain cells that we are involved in using Teams meetings, whether we're remote, whether we're in a hybrid situation, or whether we're on site. I know in Florida, some of our state agencies are having workers begin to consider how they might return to the office. So Teams meetings is going to continue to play a role even in those scenarios because being socially distanced is still something that is top of mind for all of us to make sure that we all stay safe in our pandemic world. So, as Laura mentioned, I'm eager to share with you a demo, and I will be joining and leading this demo from a government tenant. I'm actually going to be driving this completely from the browser. All of what you see me do is also available in the Teams client. And what we will do is go through scheduling a meeting and then taking advantage of all the parts and pieces within that meeting before the meeting so that everyone joins and is prepared as well as they can be for a successful outcome. So like I said, I'm in my government tenant. I have a demo tenant set up, and I'm able in my demo tenant, I have my apps down the left-hand side. Most of you are familiar with the layout in Teams, so I won't belabor that too much, but I will jump over to our calendar app because that is where we're going to be able to highlight scheduling a meeting. Asaita, if you are still handy, yes. I think because I'm going to be doing all demo here, let's take down my video feed and give the full screen view for the content that I'm sharing.
You got it. It's still showing in a narrow screen.
Well, I'll be able to do some zooming and things to help with that.
Thank you.
I can also widen my view. Okay, so I think we've zoomed in quite a bit now, but you can see down the left-hand side, I've selected the calendar app. I've landed here where I see my calendar events. This calendar view is my calendar view across all of Office 365. So even if it's not necessarily a Teams meeting, if I have a meeting scheduled that day and it shows up in my Outlook calendar, it will also show up here. So I have the same calendar view that I'm accustomed to across all of my Office apps. Now, while here, if I want to schedule a meeting, I have the ability to do that, and I'm going to step through that in Teams, but I am sure that all of you are aware that you can also schedule a Teams meeting from Outlook as well. But for this demo, we're going to cover scheduling it from the Teams side of things. So I'm here in my calendar app. I can see as a meeting organizer that I do have some available time. I would love to be scheduling a happy hour for Cinco de Mayo, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to focus on the business use cases here. So from scheduling a meeting, I'm able to click New Meeting, and it brings up my opportunity to complete the UI and create my meeting. I'm going to back down on that view just a little bit so you can see more of the form. So we're going to call this meeting an administrative sync because that's going to cover all sorts of possibilities. So think in your daily work, the need to schedule meetings. Sometimes they're recurring, sometimes they're one and done. We're going to approach this as one and done, but I'll show you how to make it a recurring meeting so that you have that available. So right now I've created my administrative sync title. And here I can go and start adding some required attendees. I also have the ability to expand the invite list and add optional attendees as well. So from here, I can invite a couple of my core team members. I'll invite Nestor and Johanna, who are also members of my tenant here. I will also want to sync as well with Bob, who is a guest in our tenant, who perhaps is a trusted partner. And I can add his information here as well. And you know, for this administrative sync, I think it would be really awesome if I could have my friend, let's just say she's also Stacy, come in from a partner organization and do a presentation. And so this next invite I'm going to type in would reflect a person who is not necessarily from within your tenant. So someone from a totally different tenant. So that could be anyone external to your organization. So I can also invite that person. I can also include folks who are perhaps using their personal email address as well. It's going to go out and validate that email address exists, and then I can add that person as well. So you can see I have a visual here between the users that are in my tenant and the users who are external to my tenant. You can see that Stacy at imamildenberger.com and stacy.mildenberger@gmail just have a slightly different visual connotation here, and that is helpful so that we can tell at a glance that that is a difference in who those attendees are. I can also add those optional attendees in the same manner. I can type the email address in, or I can pull anyone else in from my org. So here I can look at the dates and times. I also want to point out a feature in Teams that I was so excited to see released and available in the browser and in the Team client, and that is the scheduling assistant. So now that I've added folks from my own organization into this invite, automatically I can see, okay, it looks like these times are available for those people internal to my tenant. And I have the option to click on scheduling assistant, and I will change the zoom on this as well. And I can see all the folks from my unit, from my internal organization, stacked up with their calendars, and where there's availability it shows, and where there's busy time it shows that as well. So the scheduling assistant being built in, even in Teams, makes the scheduling of these much more straightforward. So I'm going to leave it as a 30-minute defaulted meeting. One thing you'll want to think about as you're scheduling meetings is let's make sure that we get as much accomplished in the shortest amount of time as possible, and build in that break time that's important for people to have an opportunity to use the facilities or freshen their cup of coffee, or just give their brain a few moments to reset and refocus on the next topic. So I generally will schedule meetings that are less than an hour. So that would be your 50-minute meeting, your 45-minute meeting, your 30-minute meeting, and even as Laura mentioned, if you're looking at scheduling like recurring stand-up meetings, keeping those to 15 minutes is key to keeping everyone energized and participating. So I have set this as a 30-minute meeting. I do have the option to create it as an all-day meeting as well, just like in Outlook. And I also have the ability to set the recurrence. So let me revisit that same topic that Laura talked about with a stand-up. If I wanted to do that and schedule it as something that proceeded every day, and perhaps a channel meeting might be better suited for that. But if I wanted to schedule it here and park it daily, I have that option. I can do a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or a custom repeat. And then I also have the option to add a channel. So I'm not going to create this as a channel meeting today because I have added external participants. And I want to make sure that this particular meeting fully embraces them and allows them to participate in chat and the various other things that are plugged in and part of meetings. If I were doing an internal only meeting and I already had a channel set up for those folks or a team set up for those folks, then channel meetings make great sense because all the information that's developed out of the meeting is then available and lands into the channel after the meeting, and then that conversation can continue there as needed. Again, I'm not selecting that today, but I do want to let you know the benefits of that. So now we also have the ability to add a location. And I hope one day soon, all of our meetings will have face-to-face locations built in. You certainly can search and use your conference room accounts that you may have as part of your Office or Outlook and build those in as well. Or you can put the local coffee shop, whatever makes sense for you. As a Teams meeting, this is going to default, as a Teams meeting that I'm creating in Teams, it's going to default to having the Teams meeting information embedded in the invitation, in the body of the invite. It will have that information by default. So don't fret if you don't see that in your Teams when you're scheduling a meeting. It will be part, and I will show you that in just a moment once I click send. But before I do, I want to emphasize that adding an agenda at this point, even if it's just something that you type and put in a couple of bullet points to trigger the conversation, that is definitely something that we recommend and is generally a best practice for any meeting. So we give you the space to do that here in the body of the invitation. So we can just add agenda with item 1 and decision 1, and any additional ticklers for the topics are going to be helpful when folks join your meeting. You will be able to have this information and share it out there and have it be a benefit to all. Before I click send, I will stop for a moment and see. Asaita, are there any questions that we should address yet?
We're good, Stacy.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then I will march right on ahead. A couple of other things I just want to mention really quickly, especially since I have this zoomed in quite a bit, is there are some ways to make the body of this invite have even more formatting if you need to. If you wanted to build your agenda out as a table, or if you have an external link that you would like to bring in and share ahead of time, you can certainly do that right here by using these tools right in the body of the invite. So I'm going to go ahead and click send because I want to show you the next level. I want to show you what is available to me as a meeting organizer once the meeting is created. So you can see now automatically the meeting is parked on my calendar. It's also automatically accepted for me as the meeting organizer. And I can then immediately go back in and see all of the additional tools we have now that the meeting is created. So I have sent the meeting. I've sent it out to Nestor and Johanna and Bob, as you know, and then a couple of the Stacys who are external to my organization. And I can see as organizer down the right that I have this unknown here. That's because none of these folks have RSVP'd as of yet. So because they haven't RSVP'd, it still is reflected as unknown. I will go in a moment. Let's see. Let me switch over. I'm going to become Johanna in my organization really quick so that you can see what happens when we accept the meeting. Okay, so I'm over here as Johanna. And I can see that switched really quickly. Let me jump back. Sorry about that. Okay, we're back in business. So you can see who I've invited. We know now that they have not yet RSVP'd. But before I jump over to Johanna's confirmation that she's going to attend, let me cover a couple of other things that are immediately available to me as an organizer of the meeting. So across the top of this meeting that I've drilled into now, I have chat, I have files, I have details, which I'm clicked on now, and I can see all of the information, including the agenda that I created and the Teams meeting join information that I promised you was going to be there. You see, it's there. And then I can also revisit the scheduling assistant if I need to. And I have meeting notes available to me now. So for just a quick moment, I'm going to touch on this and then we'll go back in to chat and the additional features. So because I'm the meeting organizer and I have access to the meeting notes, the rest of those folks who I've invited to the meeting also have access to those notes. And I can start saying, I'll just customize this a little bit so that you can see that resolve. Okay, and I can add additional sections and I can date these things and keep track of the updates if I so choose. And that's meeting notes in the context of the meeting organizer before the meeting. So let me jump over also and do a couple of other things prior to switching over to Johanna's view of this. So in the chat, I have the ability to do additional communications with those folks prior to the meeting. And one might want to do that in order to put a task out there, put something out there. Like if you need your folks to attend the meeting and have them already do something in regards to being prepared for the meeting chat that's available as soon as the meeting is created is the best place to do that. I'll also point out that because I already edited and created the notes for the meeting, that posted automatically to the chat that those meeting notes are available. So this allows everyone who has access to the chat and the meeting to see that those notes are created, and then they can visit them by clicking meeting notes when they log in the same way that I'm in here. So let's say that I have a document that I need reviewed prior to this meeting taking place. So the best way, or a common way, might be that you email everyone and you tell them to take a look at this, and then you may or may not get a million different replies from a million different places when you could have just shared it in the chat. And I'll show you how quick and easy that is to do. So I can start a chat. You can tell my cursor is at the bottom of the screen. And I'm going to ask everyone who can see this chat, and they see it if they've been invited to the meeting, to please review prior to joining the meeting so that everyone comes prepared to contribute and share that feedback. And even they could co-author during the meeting as well. But because Office 365 is embedded and connected so well with Teams on the front end, we're able to upload files. And I'm adding this one now. It'll just take a moment to resolve. And then I'm able to click send. That appears in the meeting chat. The document is then available to all the recipients. I can even see by clicking on the Files tab that it has been uploaded and it's available for opening in the browser or downloading. I can even copy the link now and share it, which could be a benefit to all the folks who are trying to work together in this meeting. Okay, now I'm ready to show you how this all looks from Johanna's side. Johanna is an internal invitee to the meeting, so let me jump over to her persona. Thanks for hanging in there with me while we jump over. So now that I'm here as Johanna, I can see my administrative sync meeting. You can tell that I haven't yet accepted it because it has this dotted line down the left-hand side rather than a solid purple line, which would mean it's one that I've accepted. So I'm going to click in here. And I, as Johanna, can do a couple of things. I can immediately chat back to meeting participants. I can immediately RSVP right here on the card. I can do the drop down, click accept, tentative, or decline. Or I can expand the meeting details, and I'll go ahead and do that. Let me widen her view as well. Sorry. I just realized you were getting a narrow view there. There we go. Hopefully that shows up better for you. So I'm going to click in just like I did a moment ago, but now you should have a little better view. And I can see everyone who was invited. Again, they're all no response or unknown because nobody's RSVP'd yet. I can RSVP with one click. I can even add a message. Let's say I needed to decline it. I could do so and then put in a quick, sorry, I have a doctor's appointment or whatever it may be. But I'm going to go ahead and accept. It shows instantaneously accepted here. And when I switch back to the organizer view, you're going to see that in Teams, in the meeting, that the organizer can see who is accepted as well. But now that I'm here as Johanna, I know, and in fact, I can see it, the chat bubble that was telling me I had a new chat just went away when I clicked on this. I can see that the administrator of the meeting, the organizer, created notes. I can see that the administrator posted to review the document prior to joining the meeting. Well, I should better do that. So I can click on it and I can do that review right here in Teams. I can also chat back to the organizer. And let them know that I'm looking forward to the meeting. And just like the other chats that you may have experienced in Teams, even though this one is tied to a meeting, I have all of the capabilities that I'm used to. I can make it an important message. I can attach my own files. I can emojify this with something fun. I can add a GIF. And when I click send, that's going to post and send a notification to others who are invited to this meeting as well. So these are the back and forth options that before the meeting are going to go a long way in making sure that your users are ready and prepared to participate fully. I can see as Johanna that I have the chat open as well, where I can communicate. I can see the Files tab where that file that was shared via chat by the organizer lives, and I can interact with that there. I can see the full meeting details, as you know, along with the invite information there. And lastly, I can see the meeting notes. I can see that the organizer has already tailored this, and I can make a new section. And this will automatically show for the other users.
Stacey?
Yes.
There's one quick question I think is good to address. And when you were talking about the @ mentions on the chat, the question is, can this work for @Yahoo or @AOL? But the better way to answer it would be, would the @ mentions work for external participants? I believe this internal.
I believe so too. I just wanted to do a quick check. Yeah, that's going to be internal only for @ mentions. And that's because it's looking at the folks internally who are invited to the meeting.
Bob K is a guest, so I'm thinking maybe because Bob K is part of a team, I wonder if it is. Can you mention Bob K?
Yeah, Bob K is a fully vetted guest here in Teams. He is. We haven't talked about meeting options yet, and when we get there, I will talk more about the guest controls for those guests and who guests are versus who your internal users are. Okay, great question. Okay, so now that we have interacted with this in a few different ways as Johanna, so you can see that internal person is participating fully across all of these. Let me jump over back to the administrator, the organizer of the meeting, and we can talk about the meeting options, which I think are going to be helpful too from the perspective of all the controls before the meeting that are important to consider. Okay, so you've landed back with me. I am the mod administrator. I am the person organizing this meeting. And as such, I have the accessibility, I have the view that I need in order to see this meeting and all of the interaction that's occurring around it. I'm going to expand the meeting details again by going to the meeting. Now I see that Johanna has accepted. As Nestor respond and as Bob responds and as those external participants respond, that information will be updated for me at a glance under tracking. This is something that you've all been doing probably for a very long time in Outlook, but I love the fact that it's landed in Teams because it helps me to keep all of my work in one place. Bouncing back and forth between tools is an efficiency difficult thing to do, and having the ability to navigate through all these pieces with the benefit of the views being incorporated from those other tools that I know and love helps keep me focused on my work and keeps me active and productive. So as I was saying, we've got the list and the tracking. I have also at a glance, you can see Nestor and Johanna and Bob and the two Stacys here. At a glance, in addition to seeing accepted over here, you can see Johanna's moniker is a little different in that it's now not that pink color. It has changed in response to her having RSVP'd. When Bob and Nestor do, that will change as well. So here as organizer, one of the things that I want to make sure that you hear today is that meeting options are going to allow you to continue to deliver Teams meetings in the most secure, collaborative, and productive way. Meeting options start with the policies that are set by IT at your organization, but as organizer, there are additional settings here that you need to be aware of and you need to understand. So we'll take just a moment to talk through those meeting options. Again, I'm drilled into the meeting that I created already earlier this session. I have all of these features available to me here, including meeting options. And when I click this, it's going to launch those meeting options that are dedicated to this meeting only in the browser. So here I can customize how my meeting behaves based on one, who I invited, and two, how I want the meeting to handle those invitees. Because however your tenant is defaulted, it's going to put people in appropriate roles based on their invitation. And here I can control that to either be a little more permissive if it makes sense, or a little less permissive if that's important. So we'll step through these options here really quickly. The first one being about the lobby feature. And the lobby feature is a very important way for you to have a gate up outside of your meeting. And I would strongly suggest you do that anytime you are inviting external participants. It is likely set in your organization. We see this by and large, that people in my organization can bypass the lobby, or people in my organization and guests can bypass the lobby, but otherwise, we have the lobby setting the way it is because we don't want external folks or people outside of my domain accessing the meeting without my explicit permission. So that's what this is dictating. Now, one of the options is everyone, and that would be the most permissive. That's saying that regardless of who you are, When you click the meeting, you're able to join if you've been invited. And so that is certainly the most permissive of these. The next one is people in my organization, trusted organizations, and guests. So that's people who are in the same domain I'm in, people in the domains that mine trusts fully or have federated with. And guests means any guests that have been added to teams in my organization. So let's say you have some teams with external facing membership. Let's say you have a team that has community members or board members that may be outside of the organization. Those would be considered your guests, because you've added them as participants in teams, in your teams, in your tenant. And then people in my organization is our newest add to this list. And what that means is if you're not joining from the same domain as the organizer, you have to wait in the lobby. I'm sorry, I said that in opposite. If you're joining from the domain the same as the organizer, then you can bypass the lobby, regardless of whether you're a guest or a trusted domain. If you are not joining from my same domain, from my same tenant, then you're going to have to wait in the lobby and let me admit you at the beginning of the meeting. And then the tightest governance option is only me, meaning as an organizer, I don't want to allow anyone in until I deem it appropriate, even beyond the start of the meeting time, if I'd so choose. So if you set this to only me, perhaps you are leading up a budget meeting or something where you need to control who has access and when, even from your internal guests or your internal joining participants, you would select only me here. A scenario for only me that we hear of often, although not necessarily in government, is in education. So if you're a teacher and you have a long list of students who join your meetings and you don't want them to join without you being present, then only me is totally appropriate and gives you the way to control that entire join option. So the lobby is essential. The lobby is also designed in order to empower you as you're determining who gets in, when they get in, and what gate clearances you put up to ensure that that happens in the way that makes sense for the audience and the participants of any given meeting. So that is going to be definitely one that I would imagine if you are organizing any meetings, that's one you revisit often. The second option, always let callers bypass the lobby. This refers to anyone who is dialing into your meetings. If you want to let those dial-in users bypass because they're not necessarily joining with video or additional content that they may be sharing, then you can leave that as yes. If you also want to admit your dial-in users, then you would want to set that as no, so that they have to come in and wait for admission to the meeting. When those callers join or when they leave, there is an audible tone and an announcement. You can turn that off by using the selection here. Now, when it's in yes, that means you're going to hear that audible sound as they join, or you can, like I said, turn it off and have it not disrupt your meeting if you anticipate having callers join in. The next option, who can present, is also one that can be a little bit of a tricky wicket, and I want to make sure I talk about it because there's really great differentiation between who can present in any of these meetings. As an organizer, with the many different meetings use cases that are out there, there is a case that can be made for all of these depending on what you're trying to accomplish in your meeting. I can tell you in Microsoft, our default setting is everyone because we want folks to be able to join and present as they come into our tenant and participate in meetings with us. The people in my organization and guests means, like it did in the lobby setting, that I can allow folks to, I can put up multiple gates, right? I can put up the gate at the start of my meeting to say you're not even getting in unless you meet these criteria. And then I can put up an additional gate that says not only am I going to verify who you are when you come in as the meeting organizer, but I'm also going to verify who you are when I consider whether or not you can present. And so that's what this setting is tailoring. And you can be very permissive, meaning everyone, or you can lock that down. And the use cases for each are totally different and are flexible to meet your needs. So the people in my organization and guests is going to sound a lot like that first gate, in that if I know you and have already allowed you to participate in Teams as a guest, then perhaps I want to default and allow you to present in Teams meetings as well. If you're in my domain, I'm cool with that too. You can come in and you can present. I also have, yes, bless you. I also have.
I was off mute.
That's okay. That's okay, Laura. And then I also have the option to dictate specific people that I want to allow to present. So in case you missed that, let me go back. So the who can present, it defaults to what my tenant setting is, but then I can tailor that. So let's say in this particular meeting that I want Nestor to be the only one who can present. I can come and see from this list of participants who can present. Now you, I'm sure, will notice, or at least I hope you do, that we're missing a couple of names here. Remember, I invited 5 attendees or 5 participants to this meeting, including the 3 you see here and the 2 external personas. The 2 external people cannot be made presenters prior to the meeting. That can be done during the meeting, but prior to the meeting, that can't be done. The only people that I will be able to select as presenters before the meeting starts are those from my organization or guests of my organization, folks who are already established as guests. So that's why you only see Nestor, Johanna, and Bob here. So in this list, let's say I want to make Nestor the only presenter besides and of course the organizer will have those rights too. So Nestor and I will be the only ones who can present. That means we're the only ones who can push content up into the meeting and share it out. I also, and just let me reiterate quickly before I move to the next option, that those external participants will not be able to be set as the presenters before the meeting, but that can be done during the meeting, and it's one of the options that we'll be sure to cover next week on the during the meeting session. Now, onto an additional setting here, and this one is also fairly new to the government cloud, so if you haven't been to the meeting options page recently, this one may be new to you, and that is allow attendees to unmute. So we heard your feedback, and we know that you typically will want your meetings to be collaborative. But in some cases, you need to control all of the audio input to the meeting. So if you wanted to host a large meeting, or perhaps a meeting with a small number where you wanted to control all of the audio and presentation materials, then you can turn this off, meaning that as your attendees join, they will be muted and they will not be able to unmute. So think of that in the scenario or use case where you're presenting perhaps content that you intend to be one way, that you don't intend to have discussion about, that you want to present and just be consumed, even though you're in a Teams meeting. Like today, we're in a Teams live event where we're not engaging in audio as well. But in the Teams meeting, this gives you similar controls in the meeting context. and allows you to control that the level of participation that you allow from your users right at the beginning of the meeting. So before the meeting, you can determine that you want everyone to join in a muted state, and you can control when you allow that to be enabled for your participants. So you may decide that you want everybody to join muted no matter what, knowing that during the meeting, you'll be able to engage and turn that on and allow folks to come off of mute later. If you decide to do that during the meeting, you'll have the ability to change that. But this allows you to set it prior to the meeting even starting. In some cases, like I mentioned, there will be use cases where that makes perfect sense. Now you have the ability to do that here. And then to allow meeting chat, we talked about the benefit of having meeting chat enabled for participation before the meeting with everyone who's invited, in that you can share files, you can share notes, you can share comments, you can share stickers and emojis and those kinds of things all before the meeting, if you so choose, and based upon your tenant settings. But allowing meeting chatting can be controlled at the meeting level. So it may be appropriate for most of your meetings to have chat enabled automatically, but you may need, in some cases, to disable chat completely, depending on how you're going to deliver your content and what your intention is around the outcomes of the meeting. You can certainly change that to disable it and just turn off chat altogether. Or we have an additional option here that I love, that is we want chat because we understand that it's going to allow collaboration, but maybe we don't need it or want it to be utilized before or after the meeting. So the in-meeting only version says that the chat is available only as the meeting has started and is ongoing, and when the meeting ends, the chat ends. That's what this option means. And so you can see how just by tweaking several of these or even one of these, that you can totally change the approach to the meeting and guide it to be the type of meeting you need it to be. As the organizer, you can make those decisions and meeting options. Your invitees, your participants, your other presenters, anyone else associated with this meeting who you may have invited, does not have access to control these meeting options. This is a per organizer access only. So as the meeting organizer, I was able to come out here and start dictating this information, and I can rest assured that no one else with access to the meeting is going to change these or tweak them without my knowledge. So I can come out and customize it to suit the vision for the meeting and my own outcome needs.
Hey, Stacy. Before we move off meeting options, two things. One is if you can show them again how to get to the meeting options. And then the second one is the question reads, I understand that soon there will be an option that allows only people I have invited to bypass the lobby. Do you know when that will be available?
Off the top of my head, I do not, but by the time we adjourn today, I can put that in the chat and share it out publicly.
Thank you. And the last question is related to meeting options is, oh, you already answered it. How do we navigate to the meeting options screen?
Okay, sure. I'll go back and revisit that. Let's see. Let me close the meeting options. Now, let me just make sure that we're back in orientation here of where we've landed, right? So I'm in the government tenant that I have set up to demo from. I am in Teams in the browser, so I have all of my typical Teams apps down the left-hand side. I have activity and chat and Teams and calendar. In order to get back to any meetings that I've created, click on calendar on the left. I can see my whole schedule, and then I can drill into the meeting that I want to see the details for by clicking it and then clicking the expansion here that opens the full meeting details and all of the assets that are connected with that meeting. So from here, I have all of those assets we talked about before across the top, including this little plus that's going, I'll go ahead and tease it for the next session. We're going to talk about meeting extensibility next. I have the ability to cancel the meeting. I can see the time zone, and I have the meeting options. So this is where you would click in order to launch the meeting options that are detailed for this specific meeting. And as organizer, I'm the only one who can see that meeting options link. The only one that this link will resolve for. If I landed here as Johanna, and perhaps I'll do that if we ended up with some extra time. I can log in as Joanna, and I can see that when I land here, it's going to say, sorry, this is for meeting organizers only. So that's how you're going to get in as a meeting organizer and take advantage of those custom things that you can dictate about your various meetings, given whatever meeting scenario you're trying to meet.
Love it.
Any other questions there?
No, there are no other questions.
Okay. I want to see one thing, and then I may switch over to an additional view here. Bear with me one moment.
While you're doing that, one thing I wanted to mention as well as far as meeting options and accessing them is on our next week's webinar when Darby or Ambrosia or Bridget are talking about during the meeting, they will also show you how you can access your meeting options from within the meeting after the meeting starts.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, all of those meetings options are important before the meeting, but certainly things change. There are opportunities for you to change them on the fly during the meeting. So being plugged in for our next session is going to help you with that. Okay, so let me switch the view. I've actually logged in that, let's see, here we go. Okay, so you're looking at now my external person. That's Stacy at imamildenberger.com as an external person. So think of this person as someone external to your organization who has their own Office 365 license, and they are dialed in and ready, and you're going to bring them into your meeting. So I received that invitation, and just like Johanna did, I have, I can see here, I can RSVP from the card. I can interact with chat from the card, but I'm going to expand it here so you can see what it looks like to that external person. So the external person receives the invite. It has the details for the win. It has the details for the agenda. It also has the details for the join link. And I can see the other folks who have been invited and whether or not they have, actually Johanna's hasn't updated as accepted, but I can see the tracking here. So I have at a glance who all has been invited. And I'll go ahead and submit my acceptance just like Johanna did. And you can see that my detailed screen for this meeting is quite different than the organizer. And it's even a little different than Johanna, who was internal to my organization, in that I have much fewer options across the top here. I only have the chat availability and the file availability. So from here, because it's allowed in the tenant that I set up, the chat is unavailable to me until I join the meeting. Same with files. So I wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that boundary that's set for those external participants. I don't know how we're doing on time. I think we probably have time. If there's additional questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat and I'll be happy to field them as they come up. I know that we have one more presentation for the day, and I'm not sure, Asaita, do you think we might start that one a little early?
Sure,
we'll see if questions come up.
Yeah, we have one question that you can address, and if you're done with your portion, we can wrap up and jump.
Okay.
the next one.
Yeah, that'd be
The
great.
one question is, what can an external participant do in a meeting set in a channel?
The channel meeting boundary is a very tightly governed one for those external participants. If that external participant is not a member of the team, and a site to keep me honest, they are not going to have access to chat. They're going to have very limited access. They can participate in the meeting itself, but there is going to be a tight boundary and tight governance around what they can do. It's one of the reasons why at the beginning of this demo, I suggested that because I want to invite these external participants, that I am not going to specifically, I avoided using a channel meeting for that very reason. Unless, of course, they're a member in your channel and then they're actually a guest and they would have some enhanced meeting controls there.